Hello and welcome back to the West Ham Breakdown with me, Jack Alderson, and my mate Callum Goodall. And we are coming to you after our first pre-season friendly, our first proper one anyway, in the PL Summer Series. And it was a 2-1 defeat to Man United. That's mainly what we're going to talk about today. We've got some stuff coming in extra time. If you want to get onto, players we're linked to, what's happened in the last week, what's going to happen on the transfer front, how does this impact who we're signing in different positions, that's all coming in extra time. That's patreon.com/analytics united. First 7 days free. We would love to see you there. We are doing Man United in the main body of the pod. And I don't know, there were some things that I felt good about. There were some things that I felt were really familiar and disappointing. Bruno Fernandes with 2 goals. Two really, 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 really silly goals from our point of view. But we had a couple of better moments in attack, and the sort of end of the second half was really good, right? Like, what were your initial takeaways?
Yeah, all of that basically confirmed a lot of stuff that I think we knew coming into the summer. Areola, eh? what a guy! It's a shame, man. But yeah, really put the exclamation point on the need for a goalkeeper, which we'll come to discuss. But yeah, just kind of a boring game, right? Just nothing really crazy. Like you say, we gifted them 2 goals. We didn't create much ourselves. I think they probably could have scored at least 1 more, maybe 2 more, based on chances that were probably better quality chances for them in terms of how they worked it rather than us giving it them. So I think the result was probably fair. I'm not massively concerned by the performance. I think there was just about enough for me to take some positives and at least see the direction of travel. If you had a more optimal squad, shall we say, which, as you say, we'll discuss in extra time, because I think an addition of some players in some key positions would make things all seem a lot rosier. But yeah, not the best performance. But as you say, it's the first kind of proper fixture. I was kind of pleased with how we looked against Grasshoppers, and I think bit of a reality check, but reminding myself that there are still a few weeks to go. Players are still getting up to speed. Man United didn't look that much better than us, really, when you take out the gifts. I just don't think there's going to be much of an increase in the New York City Hammers population, because anyone that went to that, I don't think will have left and gone, hell yeah, I want to be a West Ham fan, which is a shame.
It's true. I think for me, fair to say, and I think it is after last season, 2 pretty poor sides in this game, and 2 sides that look like maybe a little bit fresher than they did last season, and some maybe a little bit clearer over some of the stuff that they wanted to execute, but still quite lacking in the actual execution phase of the ideas, even with maybe a bit more clarity than there was at times last season. I think the biggest development in terms of clarity over things for us after this game is we've sort of ummed and ahed about what it would look like this season. A 3-box-3, I think we all assumed when Potter was coming in that was going to be the system we would eventually move to play more often than not. That's not to say he's not incredibly tactically flexible. We've said that a lot. He's not wedded to any one system. He's played lots and lots and lots of different systems over his time at Brighton and Chelsea. But even if different systems might line up as the way that he's playing in a certain game, we can often enter the dynamics of a 3-box-3 if it starts as a 4-2-3-1 or as a 3-5-2 or as any other system. And this felt like confirmation that what we saw last season wasn't just a temporary band-aid over a problem and waiting till we could resolve things with recruitment to move in a different direction. It felt like actually a much more developed version of what we were doing last season. And I suppose the immediate thing we have to address is that if 3-5-2 looks like it might be the way that we're going, what has to change? Like, what are the key things that have to change? What are the key things that have to be better to stop it from being quite so tough to watch going forward? Last season, we did a lot of things not really well defensively, but better than we had done maybe over the last year beforehand defensively, in that stretch of time where we were playing the 3-5-2. But going forward, it was really quite tough at times to watch us. Very slow, very predictable, found it very hard to generate any kind of big chances.
Yeah, I mean, I think the clear one for me, I think, is, and it's, again, I feel like a broken record because we've constantly been saying this throughout the summer, but I think a lot of our best moments in this game came in moments where we were able to sort of punch the ball out wide and then punch it back into central areas, and it looked good because we'd created the space within the middle of the park and successfully worked out a way to get around a double pivot, which has quite often been a challenge for us. And this was good. We've seen now that there is a method in which we can do that, and there are clearly players that are bought in to this method and can execute this method. I think the issue that we have, and something that does need to change, and this is why I feel like a broken record, is that throughout the course of a Premier League season, whilst it didn't look so bad in this game, you cannot rely on those players to carry forward. You cannot rely on Thomas Souček and Ward-Prowse to be those players that are expected to carry forward in those moments, essentially. Yes, in this game, Souček carries forward quite nicely, albeit under zero pressure and very slowly, and gets an assist out of it, which is great. But at the speed of a mid-season Premier League game, you're unlikely to be able to carry at that glacial pace, and you're unlikely to be uncontested. So I need someone in that position who can find that space and receive the ball, and we can replicate that exact movement where you punch it out to the wing back, who punches it back inside to the number 8, who can receive the ball on the move, like receive it in his stride and carry forward, not receive, turn, run forward, and invite pressure from behind. And you need a player that is much more confident doing that at speed and receiving on the half turn and carrying forward, which we haven't addressed yet. Which, yeah, is a huge shame because I think it was such an obvious thing to address. I think it will be addressed. We're obviously seeing a lot of names linked, which we'll talk about in extra time. So do join us there. But yeah, I think this is why I felt an element of promise, even though we lost. It was something that we'd anticipated might be coming in pre-season and moving forward, and it's clear now that is a direction of travel that we're going to head in, because we're trying to do it even with players that aren't really made for it, which suggests that it's definitely something Potter wants to bake into this system. I do still have that question mark over my head though of, yes, I agree with you that I don't think it's a band-aid anymore. I think it is a genuine, if not plan A, certainly plan B, or just a plan, because I don't think Potter really has a plan A or a plan B. I think it depends, but I think it's something that we're going to see frequently. But because of how little work has been done to rectify rather the two real weak points that meant that we had to play the 3-5-2 last season, which was lack of legs in midfield, lack of ball carriers in midfield, and also lack of goalkeeper who can sort of start it all off at the bottom. I wonder if, unfortunately, the Band-Aid has kind of had to be kept on. We've had to buy some really good Band-Aids that don't lose adhesive stickiness, because unfortunately he's not got the players to be able to try and move away from that, and Somerville's obviously not fit, so that doesn't help either. And yeah, it's a shame, but I think, yeah, that would be the crucial one. I need ball carrying central midfielders, because if we are going to play with the 6 and 2 8s, which it looks is quite likely, then we need way more ground coverage and dynamism from those 8s, because we just won't be able to execute this successfully when everyone's at top speed.
I think if this is the time really to bake in the ideas that you want the players to carry forth throughout the rest of the season, and I think if something else was going to be plan A, I think we'd be doing that regardless of whether we had the right guys in the building right now to be able to do that. I think actually there's a good indication that, like you say, it doesn't, plan A or plan B is not necessarily the right way to look at it, but this is clearly something that they want to do and something they want to be able to execute well. That consistency of execution really for me is very simple. You can talk about ball carriers, you can talk about players who can cover ground. I think across the entire team, the simplest way of talking about it is just physical intensity. The intensity of the Premier League is so high, you just need to be able to match that at all times in all areas. And I don't think we have that with consistency in the squad right now. We've got players that do a huge amount of work, that are great athletes, but compared to some of the really, really elite athletes, and being able to not just run far but run quick. That's sometimes where we can come unstuck, I think. And it's great that we have players that can cover a huge amount of distance for the team across the season. We need to help those guys out with some players that can do the bursts a little bit better. One player who I think has brought a little bit of that, at least to the back line, is someone who I've criticised an awful lot before. It's Naya Gerd. I actually think his impact as someone who can run really quite quick and can receive the ball in the back line, take a big touch out of his feet and just start running forward with the ball, is a useful thing. And you immediately begin to see why Potter has been said to be so keen on keeping him around. Also, I think that's much easier when you look at what's available in the left centre-back market. You know, players that can do what he does at the same level that he does. You're looking at a very small group of players and then finding someone that can do that, where you're not ending up spending 20 million plus in a position we really can't afford to do that in. It's tough to find a solution like that. But I think he will make a really big positive impact just on that front. Forget the rest of it. You know, how other things will go. Aerials, I still have concerns over. I think we saw that in this game. Yep. Set piece defence, it's something I was worried about at the back end of last season. You bring another centre back in who's not the most reliable on that side of things. I think that's something that we have to watch very carefully. And then I suppose the nice thing about what we're doing at the moment is that you get utility out of all of these. You know, obviously we want to improve it, but you get utility out of all of these guys. All of these guys are able to make an impact, able to make a difference, able to help the team in these roles. I'm talking about in midfield. We have a lot of midfielders right now. There's loads of them.
It's crazy, isn't it? We've got, like, I think 8 central midfielders I saw in contention, and we're still sat here going, we need to sign at least 1, maybe 2 midfielders, which is a horrible position to be in.
It is. It's a really horrible position to be in, but I think if you're looking at what you have and knowing that you've probably got to find ways to replace guys or find new places to move players onto, you're probably best off. You're not going to be able to replace the whole department, so you have to find a system. You have to use a system that's going to be able to give you maximum utility out of the guys that are already there. And I think this allows us to do that. I really like the kind of doubling down on focusing on getting numerical superiority in the middle wherever possible and however possible. And we've seen that really, you know, if doubling down almost seems like too soft for what it's felt like. It felt like in this game we were really focusing very intensely on how to manipulate Man United's double pivot, pull it forward if at all possible, and then exploit the space in behind. And that was really focused in the way that we use Guido so deep, in the way that we use Fulkrug so deep for so much of the game. That gives a lot of help toward Prowse and Souček. It makes it a little bit easier in terms of the yards that they have to cover. I actually thought, you know, what you spoke about worked quite well, and it's quite a nice blueprint of what we might be able to do. So much of last season was so much focus on, like, Wan-Bissaka being the guy that breaks forward and progresses for the team at all times. So the idea that he can do that, and he did that at points in the game, but he can also just receive the ball out wide and knock it back inside, and actually there's going to be someone there to receive it, because there's just so many players versus United's 2. There's 4 guys in there. There's always going to be someone drifting free and already moving forward to be able to pick the ball up and keep it moving, or move it into Bowen, who can obviously be very, very dangerous when we get moving at speed forward. It brings me to a question, really, which I think is quite important from my side of things, and something that I've spoken about really loads and loads when we've considered the idea of sort of changing style to being a more possession dominant team. Does this utilization of overloading in the midfield and particular focus on, like, having Bowen right at the top of the pitch, not dropping into like a number 10 kind of position as much as he did last season, but actually right at the top of the pitch, running in behind the defence as much as possible, in combination with deep build-up, does it really signify finally the kind of birth of some sort of, I know the terminology sort of moved on really in the tactic space, but artificial transition, the idea of trying to generate a counter-attack from a non-counter-attacking situation so that you can get a player like a Bowen and a Langer or any of the other forwards like that in the league into the situations in which they really, really thrive?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it makes sense when you think about sort of, particularly the way that Potter likes to build up, and marrying that with the strengths that exist within the squad, particularly if we go on to recruit some of those key final pieces, I think it's moving away from what at times felt like possession for possession's sake, probably because we didn't have those players, bar Bowen and Wan-Bissaka, who could be that sort of touch point where, okay, we've had possession for a bit and now the circumstances are such that we can spring forward. And if Wan-Bissaka had the ball, he would make that movement. He would be the one that would carry forward or carry into the centre of the pitch and try and play it back out to Bowen. Or Bowen would pick up the ball on the halfway line and drive forward. But if it was another player who maybe didn't have that sort of ability to execute, or even necessarily the foresight to know when that moment has arrived and sort of read the lay of the land and go, sweet, now we go. I think it feels like we're moving towards a scenario by building in different ways of moving forward, not just one method, but as we say, sort of using the wing backs to facilitate progression, not just be the progressive hub. So that's play the ball out to Wan-Bissaka, who plays back inside, and then the midfielders carry forward rather than play the ball to Wan-Bissaka and go, please do something good here. And that's nice, and I think that's good. But yeah, I think it will be interesting because I think, again, and it comes back round to that midfield option, right? Because it's like, okay, yeah, I want some carriers who can read the game and go, right, sweet, now we're springing forward. But we also need more midfielders who can not just carry forward, but pick the moment. I think Potts did it really well, actually, when he came on, and just be like, sweet, I can see that there's, if the next pass after mine is played correctly, that there's space for Bowen to attack. So I'm going to punch this ball forward now rather than circulate, which is what I've been doing for the last 2 minutes. Yeah, I think it is coming, and it's funny that you say like the sort of artificial transition and terminology has moved forward, but I think that's right, because I think it's lots of teams are moving forward as well, and we're kind of arriving at the idea of the artificial transition way later than everyone else has. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and I think it will depend. It's so game state dependent and so position dependent, right? I think this could be much more useful against teams who want to press us intently. I think it's probably less useful against teams that have just been promoted, who maybe are more likely to sit off and allow us to have more of the ball, because you're not going to be able to bait that press quite so easily. Whereas if you're going up a game against a team who consider themselves to be so much better than you, which frankly, based on the form that we exhibited at the back end of last season, could be quite a few of the teams in this league, then there are, hopefully, if we can get it right and really learn how to play this way and learn when to pick our moments, if we can invite that press, then there are all of a sudden a lot of games that we should feel hopeful that we can definitely compete in, whereas maybe last season we didn't, because we didn't quite know when to have those artificial transitions. So yeah, if we can get more comfortable with playing this way, I think, yes, it is the birth of the artificial transition, and I think it is a good thing for us, and I think we have the right players to be able to do it. Almost. I think we need a few more additions. But yeah, I think just more decision making and more comfortability of knowing when is the right time to now invite because it's like, it's all well and good you've invited the artificial transition, but it sounds stupid to say, but it's only a transition if someone in the team decides it's a transition. Like, we could bait it to the moment, but if it's the wrong person with the ball at his feet, he might just carry on trying to circulate, and then all of a sudden we're screwed, because baiting the press turns into just being pressed, and then we'll just lose the ball and concede, which is not good. But we saw happen today. So
there are a couple of things that you finished on there that I want to pick up on, and I think the first one is it's probably about whoever plays deepest in midfield. And actually, I think whilst we saw, and we're going to come on to Potts, whilst we saw a really good level from Potts in that position later in the game, in a way, the focus on deep build up, the wider centre backs, and all of that stuff, it's quite it can be, from the perspective of trying to instigate pressure, quite a simple job for the deepest midfielder, because all you need to do is move into the right space, draw someone out with you, play the ball back to the goalkeeper or to one of the centre-backs, and then actually that's the player that's probably going to play forwards, not so much you. So I think, again, in terms of utility of a Ward-Prowse and of a utility of a Guido Rodriguez, if you can't move Rodriguez on for whatever reason, or if Ward-Prowse plays a lot of the season in that kind of role, I don't really have a concern about their ability to execute something like that. I think they can help us a lot. I then think, the big things, we've spoken about further forward in midfield, having a carrier, someone that can really cover ground quickly. We know we're addressing that. So it doesn't really worry me because I know there's going to be a player that comes in to help us. There's been way too many names linked who do exactly that sort of thing. For that not to be a priority and for that not to be something that happens before the end of the window. So I know at some stage I'm going to have someone moving forward out of that midfield three at the right moment for when the ball moves into Wan-Bissaka or the ball moves out to Diouf or Walker-Peters, whoever it is. When they then get pressed and they want to move the ball back inside, there's going to be someone arriving in that moment to take the ball off of them and run forward with it. And they're actually going to be able to run forward with the ball at this kind of speed that enables them to get away from retreating players, not just immediately be caught by retreating players. So less concern there. Even less concern when I consider the fact that we're obviously going to go for a goalkeeper after this game. I mean, everything we're hearing after this.
I really hope so.
Yeah. And everything we've heard all winter, we know we're going to go for a goalkeeper. Yeah. We know we're going to have a different goalkeeper probably in goal for most of next season. So if you think about it from that perspective, not where we are right now. Yeah, we saw these things go wrong in this game, right? Obviously, because the players aren't perfect to be able to execute that. But if you just, superimpose that midfielder solution in there and that goalkeeper solution in there, then I think the idea of being able to move the ball around deep, have a midfielder that moves into the right space just to drag one of those other midfielders on the opposition out, knock it back into a centre-back, and then the difference actually, and big praise here for Jean-Claire Todibo. I know it's pre-season. I didn't like a lot of what I saw out of possession, and we're going to talk about that. But in possession, finally, unlike a lot of what I saw last season from him, finally these direct balls straight through the midfield, straight through the opposition midfield into Füllkrug. This is exactly the kind of thing that we need to see. Because if Füllkrug then is receiving in that position, or Paquetá, because we've seen Paquetá play a lot of this role coming off the bench, then actually it's quite easy for him to knock the ball back into that midfielder who's coming to take the ball off of him, who might be Matheus Fernandes, might be, obviously they were interested in seeing if it could be a Harvey Elliott or it could be someone like a Jack Grealish or someone really, really special to take that role. Might be Romano Schmid. That's someone we're going to talk about on extra time today. They're going to go for someone to take that ball off of that player and then play forwards or carry forwards, and it's going to be Bowen who's running off the back line to try and score goals in those situations, which actually I think dynamically works really, really nicely. Or simultaneously, or unlike that, if they don't want to knock the ball inside or that player doesn't arrive, I actually think with Füllkrug and with Paquetá, you've got two players who will be quite good at winning free kicks in those situations. If they receive the ball and they haven't got the option, they'll crumple under pressure to their back and win free kicks. I think Paquetá's particularly good at doing that. And actually, both have got the quality to try a little back heel in those situations as well, to play the player through themselves without needing the support of another midfielder. We've seen Füllkrug try a couple of those. He's in pre-season already, tried a few in this game. And Paquetá obviously has that kind of thing in his locker. So I think that all works well, but hinges an awful lot on the understanding of where to be on the pitch in midfield and what you're trying to do in midfield. I think that looks better already. The understanding of, okay, these guys have two in midfield. Let's really focus on overwhelming that. And Souček, actually a little bit nice to see. Saw it as well in the Grasshoppers game, slightly different. That was more about attacking channels. But in the Man United game, really nice to see those moments where it's happening in real time. The processing is happening. He sees Mainu jump and he goes, right now I need to run because I'm going to be the guy that receives the ball and has the chance to move forward or play forward straight away in this situation. Really important that develops, and also really, really, really crucial that we get better, much better and much more consistent output from those central defenders. It has to be cleaner, it has to be more accurate. We can't turn the ball over. And there has to be more risk that goes with it as well. So it's hard. Like there's a big asks of the central defenders. I'm hoping, as we've already spoken about, Agurd can contribute to that. I'm hoping if Todibo, we didn't even get half of what Todibo has been the rest of his career last season. I don't know what happened with him last season, but miles off the player he has been in previous seasons. If we get closer to even 80% of that, we will have a level of ability to just break into that front line a lot more quickly. So I like how all of that stuff I can see a roadmap for how a lot of that stuff could develop and function quite well. And when we talk about, run a plan, whether you have the guys or not, so everyone's familiar with what the plan might be, I can see how we're doing that. It's not perfect, but when you add the right players, that it could work quite nicely. My next question is how will that balance though with what we more typically see with Potter, which is a want to have more of the ball, I want to control more, I want to arrive in the final third more often, I want to possess the ball in the final third more often, because the more you try and attack, build up really deep and then attack really directly, the harder I think it actually is to be as slow and possession focused as you might want to be as well. And that's a big question that's still open for me, is how, if that's something we lean into more, which I'd be glad for us to do, because I think we have a squad that can do those things and execute those things relatively well. How do we then balance that with trying to also control games with the ball and not end up just sort of trying to push the ball forwards really quickly in these sorts of repeated almost automatisms, and then end up potentially losing the ball quite a lot and defending quite a lot as a result?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, and I think we've got past for this, right? Like this is kind of what we tried to do with Moyes for a bit, where it was like, okay, we're going to now try and do a bit more of the keep the ball stuff, because people have started to work out that we're really good at transitioning, and then we tried to flip-flop between the two depending on the opposition, and it just didn't work. What I would say is that I think the key difference is that part of the reason that didn't work, I think, was that we brought a lot of players who, in theory, well, in practice as well, actually, really, a lot of the time, were good on the ball, and therefore the team should become good on the ball because we have players that are good on the ball. But we still tried to defend in a very similar way out of possession, which was defend the box, and we didn't really seem to factor in the fact that a lot of these players who were good on the ball maybe weren't so good at doing the sort of last-ditch defending stuff. And I think part of the reason I think it might work better this time out of possession is that we're going to couple the let's do the nice ball stuff with let's do high line, high press stuff, which I think suits a lot of those players more. So you're going to find yourself in unfavourable positions less often, I think. And then I think also it's personnel based, right? You need players who are tactically intelligent, and I think we have that in the likes of Wan-Bissaka. I like to think we'll have that in Juve with time. I think we've got that with the likes of Ward-Prowse, although he has limitations elsewhere. Players that can understand that at any given moment in a game, one might have to play a slightly different way. And I think really the difference between what we're trying to say, like transitionally and in terms of keeping the ball, I think a lot of it is actually very similar until you get to that final action. And I think you just delay when the final action comes and how you get to that final action, right? I think the transition or the artificial transition is keep the ball, keep the ball, keep the ball, and pick the right moment to go forward quickly from deeper areas. And I think really you just kind of keep the ball, keep the ball, keep the ball, but remove the need or the urgency with which you need to get to that final moment. And I think we have players that can do that. It's like a lot of the early stuff in build-up can stay the same. We can still build from the goalkeeper. We can still go to the wide centre-backs. We can still bounce the ball from the wide centre-back into the six and back out to the wing-back. But instead of then going, right, now we need to bomb forward and play the ball in behind and get runners on it, you just then go, okay, I'm going to knock it into the 8, who's then going to knock it back to the 6 again. And now the 6 is going to switch it to the other flank. And we're going to gain almost like an NFL approach, like yards each time, like go forward 6 yards, come back 3 yards to gain 3 yards, and then we'll do the same again and we'll knock it around. And I think we saw that we can do that last season. I think we did that really well last season. It was just that a lot of the final action stuff when we got there was quite predictable, really. It was a lot of, right, we've got there and now cut it back to the edge of the box and whip one in, and or cut it back to the edge of the box, and then the player that receives the ball on the edge of the box uses his momentum to go to the byline and then cut it back. And that was it. It was one of those two. And I think now, which is what pre-season's for, I think we're now trying to find a third and a fourth way to do that. And that is the more transitional way, which is with these carriers in midfield that can carry forward. But I think it's not just a case of, okay, we're throwing all the cutback stuff and we're throwing all the byline stuff and we're throwing all the gradual build-up stuff out because we're now going to go with this transitional approach. I think we know that we can do that. We know that Wan-Bissaka was here doing that last season. We know that Bowen had a good season, even being asked to play in a way that maybe isn't his best way last season. And we know that Ward-Prowse can do a job of circulating at the back. And we know that Kilman's all right. And we know that Todibo can do some of this stuff and is improving. So now let's try and learn some new stuff this season that we can then add in and go back to the old stuff last season. And I think the ball carrying stuff, yes, it is more transitional in nature, but it can still exist in the sort of slower build-up, keep possession thing. You're just doing it from a much more advanced start point. Like, you could still have that ball carrying 8, but instead of receiving the ball on the halfway line, trying to help us progress and carry forward, instead, you could do the cutback, give the ball to the ball carrying 8 around the edge of the box, and he can try and dribble a last man instead and carry into the penalty area and maybe get fouled and win a penalty, or maybe beat his man. And instead of having to rely on a wing back, we can now rely on a wing back and an 8 to get us into the final third and create that final action. So I think that is where I see the balance. I think you go back to the stuff we were doing quite well last season, but unfortunately we just couldn't create the final action in the final third regularly enough because it was kind of a one-trick pony approach and just rely on Wan-Bissaka a lot. And now I think we have more options. We can do the stuff we do with Wan-Bissaka, but now we can do it with Juff as well on the other side, which makes it more exciting in possession because we've got 2 options. And if we address this ball-carrying situation in the middle of the park, which we expect that we will, we then have a third option, which is the 8 can carry in advanced areas as well as deep areas. And presumably, a lot of these really technical ball-carrying number 8s are usually pretty tidy around the box, either with a long shot or with a threaded ball as well, which is a 4th additional way. So I think that's it.
That's exactly what I was going to add. I was going to, on top of ball carrying, which is obviously a big focus, a lot of those players are going to bring creativity. A lot of those players are going to bring the ability to play a final pass. And, that should theoretically help as well. It's not like, I think you described it neatly, it's not like this stuff impedes our ability to do the stuff that we were doing last season. I actually think they should just improve the way that we do what we did last season. It's actually really simple. Sometimes you break forward into that moment where someone has a bit of space grass in front of them and they could carry, and it's about saying, in some of those moments, I'm going to carry, drag the opposition back, and then when they get back, I'm going to turn around and play it back to a centre back, and we're now going to stabilise and have some of the ball in your half, and not every time trying to force the final ball into Bowen making a run, a la a little bit of the sort of Paquetá chips, which is what we've had a lot of in these situations. Is that you get there and it's like, what? We got to force something because we've arrived in the situation. We don't arrive here all that often. I think the idea is if you do it a bit more consistently, and it's happening more regularly in games, and you address, some personnel issues which we know we've spoken about. Theoretically, you should have the know-how that develops in the team to know that we're good enough to some of these moments just utilize them as an opportunity to play higher up the pitch and take control of the game and have more of the ball.
Yeah,
and that would be really nice to see, right? That blend of sometimes we can go and we can really hurt you with players in behind, and sometimes we can turn out, and now we can just really hurt you by making it very difficult for you to get the ball off of us.
I think that's it. I think it's like the approach and the means are largely the same in both scenarios. I think the end is slightly different, and to me, the end is we're doing the same methods, but in one instance, the end is to force space in behind, and in the other, the end is to force space around the edge of the box. But you use the same methods to get there. And if you want to create space in behind, you drop a little bit deeper. You drop Fulkrug deeper to drag centre-backs out. You allow Bowen the space to crash. Or if you want to create space on the edge of the box, you commit your wing-backs further forward, you pin their defenders, and then you've got space for these 8s and 10s to create on the edge of the box. And you keep Bowen and Fulkrug picking up pockets in the box, which we know both of them excel at. Bowen is such a knack for someone that is not hugely big, just being able to time his runs to attack the ball in space in the box, which is great. Ultimately it's lots of similar ideas to create space in different areas, which is, I guess, kind of what football's all about, right?
I should also say I'm going to miss Kudus, but not having him will actually probably help us
massively.
Be less kind of hell-bent on trying to go forward as quickly as possible every time we get the ball into that front line. I don't think Bowen's going to stop being like that, and I don't want Bowen to stop being like that. I want him to be aggressive as often as possible when he gets the ball. I don't want that to become as an impediment to balance. And by actually removing Kudus from the team...
well, you can afford to have one. You can't really afford to have two.
Exactly right. By removing Kudus from the team and theoretically replacing him with someone who's got a bit of a better temperament for knowing when to go and when not to go, which is hopefully what these players that we're targeting will be, or the player that eventually arrives will be. It should stop us from being so one track, and actually I think it will probably help Bowen be much more impactful ultimately with the numbers that he's able to get at the end of a season, because the balance will be better and will be less predictable as a team, and as such it will be more of a shock to the system, to an opposition, when Bowen does receive the ball and go, right now I'm just going to try and dribble through you all.
I think that's it.
Every time any of the forwards in the team or even the fullbacks in the team get the ball, everyone's trying to do exactly the same thing, and therefore you can kind of settle into a rhythm as the opposition of like, well, kind of every time these guys are getting the ball, they're going to try and dribble, so this is a situation if we can stand off a little bit, or we can just go and be really aggressive and smash these guys on reception.
I think that's it, and I think you see it in the goals we've scored in pre-season, right? Like that Bowen assist for Irving, if that's Kudus breaking through, he shoots. He doesn't lay it off. He tries to get the goal. And Bowen's goal against United, if that's Kudus through, he carries in the same way, but then takes an extra touch to try and get it on his left foot and wrap it around. And in that moment, it's been blocked. Whereas Bowen's through and gone, no, actually, sweet. I'm going to take this on the right, catch the keeper off guard, catch the defender by giving myself a bigger shooting angle because I can take it on my weak foot. I think that's the sort of, as you say, that the thing that sets Bowen apart from Kudus, I think, is that decision making in the final third. It's not I need to be the person that scores the goal every time. Maybe that's a bit harsh on Kudus, but it certainly felt like that at times, and certainly towards the back end when he was having a bad season, and I feel like he felt like he needed to make amends, and the decision making suffered as a result. Whereas I think Bowen's more, the team needs to score because we need to win, and maybe Andy's in a better position, so I'll just lay it and he can lever it in, which is good. And I'm really excited actually for Bowen this season. I think I was worried at first, and I still have concerns. I would still rather him play out on the right and drift in and create that space. But I think with what I'm seeing now, the way that the dynamics are working with Fulkrug and the way that I see opportunities being created throughout the season, I still think you can get Bowen into those positions that I want him to be in from the right wing, but I just think you do it in a slightly different way. Whether that's, as we say, Fulkrug dropping deep for Bowen to attack space in behind, that's fine, because Bowen with time in front of goal is generally good. He will take the right touches, he will move the ball into the right position to open up nice shooting angles, and he's a very, very good finisher off both feet. And like we say, if we're going to rely on cutbacks and crosses and stuff from the wing backs, then again, that's great. Bowen will just drop out of the box, stand on the edge of the box and go, bruv, I'm here. just square it. I got this, which is good. So yeah, I'm now that I've seen some of the patterns of play that I think we'll look to use, I'm less concerned.
We've done a lot of in possession chat. We've done a lot of talk about, how we're going to move the ball forward, how we're going to generate chances, and I like talking about defensive stuff, so I'm sorry, everyone.
The sicko is back.
I'm sorry. We got to do a little bit of chat about out of possession. What's my concern with what we're doing? My biggest concern with what we're doing is whoever does come in to play as that left 8 in the 3, it's going to have to do a shitload of running without the ball, because the way that we are trying to press requires, especially when we play against a team like Man United, who are going to play with a back 3, it requires that left 8 to run all the way out to the right centre back and complete that pressing run. And actually, I think in a lot of situations we're going to find that player has to do a lot of running anyway, because in different sorts of games where we come up against teams that play with more of a single pivot at the base of maybe a 3, and it's a bit more like a 4-3-3. I still think then asking Fulkrug to go and make those shuttles is going to be a bit of a tall order, just with his legs and his ability to complete 90 anyway. I think it's more likely that we sit that player on the 6, Fulkrug on the 6, and that this 8 ends up being a little bit more like a second striker or another striker out of possession against those teams, and they are actually going out and doing all the pressing again. So when I'm thinking about across a whole season, that's a lot of running to do, because you're going out and doing all the pressing, but then when the ball does move through and you end up having to run back towards your own goal and defend deeper, you're not running back to then, jogging back like the forwards do and slotting into a front three or a front two and standing at the top of the pitch and being ready for when the ball turns over. No, you're steaming back, and actually you need to be back in that three in midfield, not a two in midfield, in the three in midfield, to help protect the centre-backs, help protect the centre of the pitch and force the ball out wide. And I can't emphasise enough how difficult that will be for someone to cope with. The out of possession demands are going to be massive on whoever plays in that position.
Yeah, and it's also not like they're pressing slowly either, right? Like, they're going to have to press quite aggressively onto that right-sided centre-back for it to be worthwhile.
It's going to be sprints.
It has to be sprints, because I
It's
think
going to be sprints out and sprints back.
We saw us try to do this last season with Souček quite a lot, where love the bloke, and he's got an engine. He can do it for 90 minutes, but there's no point in him actually doing it because he just can't arrive with the pace that you need to actually make the centre-back feel scared. Like, they'll look at him and go, what's that ship in the distance? No, I'll just paddle out to the right and he's going to go straight past me and there's no danger. And then you just look back and go, big ship that, isn't it? Whereas I think you need someone who actually puts the fear of God into the centre-back and go, I need to make this pass quickly. And then you force the mistakes. Otherwise, you might as well just sit in a slightly deeper mid-block, because you're not. The whole point of pressing is to force mistakes, right? Or to force people to play in a direction that you are comfortable defending them in, or an area rather. And without moving very quickly, you can't do that, because they'll just play around you. Like, it's all well and good running forward, but if you've then left a shitload of space behind you that you can't cover, then all of a sudden they've just played back into the middle and they're moving forward.
Yeah, so intensity is a big ask, whoever plays in that position, and actually just number of yards covered, like distance at the end of a game, is going to be massive for whoever plays in that position. So that's a concern. Actually, just from the perspective of not, do we have players to do that right now? It's actually more of like, is that possible? Is that actually going to work?
Yeah. Who can do that?
Who can do that? And is it doable? And if it isn't doable, what happens? What changes? How do we fix that? Because that will be a big problem for us.
Well, there's a long list of players that you discussed quite nicely on AU, on the Patreon. A bonus episode, in fact.
It's true. We did a video on midfielders that we think we should sign, who are really, really good at covering ground. It's kind of one of their big things, and we did a bonus video on it, like you say, Carl, an extended 10 players who could fulfill that sort of job for the team, and that's over on Patreon, patreon.com/Analytics United for 7 days free. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I was going to describe as the interdependency between whoever does that, and then probably also, despite the fact that we do get all this nice utility out of all the guys that are currently here, it's probably going to need someone who's a little bit more confident at covering ground and winning tackles in the two that aren't doing quite so much running, because in theory, at least for me, it's quite likely that the press might work out as being quite functional, but I think it's quite likely that we end up defending with a 2 quite a lot when teams do go through us, and that third players, if they get time and the ball slows down, and like we were talking about earlier, the ball doesn't immediately move into the forwards and they're not immediately attacking, they turn around, play back to the centre backs. Sure, then we can slot back into a 3 in midfield, we can slot into a deeper defensive shape. That's fine. I think the rest of the time, when we face more transitional moments where the ball does progress through the lines really quickly, it will be a 2. I imagine most of the season. That means for me, need someone who's going to win tackles in there consistently and going to be able to cover ground quick in there as well. Protect that number 6 who can maybe be a little bit more immobile as a result, which is maybe where you get your utility for lots of players being in the squad, depending on moves. Obviously, we don't know, but Edson Alvarez, Guido Rodriguez, Ward-Prowse, I think there's one slot for those 3 players in the team. In a perfect world, I don't really think you can have more space in there. So that's the next thing for me. And then the last thing I wanted to speak about, I promise I'll wrap it up as quickly as possible, is intensity from the back line. I saw that from Naifa Gerd. Jean-Claire Todibo, there's so much work that needs to be done there. They were so far off the levels required out of possession. If you're going to go and make those pressures at the top end of the pitch with the midfielder joining Fulkrug and Bowen, and you're trying to be really intense. The wing backs are going to come up as well in moments. The midfielders are going to. You can't then have moments where Matheus Cunha's dropping into the pocket to receive and Jean-Claude Todibo's looking at it and going, I feel like I can remember the manager saying something about, what was it again? Oh, yeah, pressing. I'll go now. Yeah. And by the time he's gone, Rasmus Højlund's on his bike into the gap that he's now created, and the ball's just gone straight into it. So that worries me. That decision-making, the speed of thought, and the commitment to it needs to be so much better. You need to fully commit. There are going to be times where it goes wrong. There are going to be times where you look stupid as a result of it. Trust your centre-back. Trust the goalkeeper, who's going to have to do more sweeping this season. And get on with it. And stop thinking about it, because there's too much time spent thinking about it at the moment. That's a real worry for me. And then again, interdependency between, if that player stops thinking about it so much and is more aggressive, then Kilman, I need you to sprint faster than whatever that was against Rasmus Højlund.
Treacle legs. Yeah.
I know you can run fast, so let's shift in, because there are going to be lots more situations where you are running to cover those gaps this season.
More bleep tests needed.
Exactly. So yeah, like we say, when I sum up really those out of possession concerns, they all come back to the same: physical intensity. Can you run at speed? Can you make the decisions quickly, move at speed consistently across 90 minutes in the Premier League in the same way that other teams can? You're going to have to, if you're going to want to compete in the Premier League this season. Otherwise, doesn't matter how many nice ideas we have, how many ways in which that can help patch up players that don't quite fit, or help make players that do fit play better, we will probably still be down there at the end of the season if you can't match that level consistently, because that's what happens to teams when you can't physically cope in the Premier League. It really renders the rest of it useless. Russell Martin spoke about it with Southampton, came up with loads of nice ideas, loads of players that can move the ball nicely. If you can't cope physically, you just get battered week in, week out. There's nothing you can do about it. Doesn't even really renders the technical. You can be so much better technically. If you can't cope physically, it's over. So that's really big concern for me. I think there's still a lot yet to be seen on that front. A lot of work to do on that front to really help us move forward as a more aggressive out of possession team, rather than such more of a sort of waiting for the opposition to make a move and then reacting to everything. Such a reactive defensive team. Very briefly, and we'll cover the rest of this in extra time. Join us over there. Like I say, patreon.com/Analytics United. We'll do more of an individual performance chat on players that we haven't covered. Favorite individual performance in this match, Cal?
I mean, Bowen's probably the obvious one, even though he wasn't involved that much. But I will shy away from that because I think, as I say, it's an obvious pick. Potential rogue shout, but only because it comes off the back of what you were just saying and confirms how much I would like him to stick around, if not start. I think Mavropanos, in the short time he was on the pitch, really impressed me. In terms of a centre-back that we have in the squad who can do both the in and out of possession stuff, I think so far from what we've seen, and also from the performance he put in against Ipswich on the last game of the season, he might be the best, or certainly the most capable of doing it all that we have at the minute. I think in possession, he almost gets an assist. He does that sort of 1-2 with Paquetá, picks it up in the middle. Kind of what we were discussing at the top of the pod, that ability to bounce it and then know when to carry forward, and carry forward well, and then release the ball well. And then out of possession, I think he addresses a lot of the concerns that we were just discussing with Todibo. I think it was actually part of the reason that fans really started to get on his back, I think, particularly when he was playing under Moyes, was that he is almost hard-coded to step out and press aggressively. And that's not what Moyes wanted. He wants you to sit and hold that line and protect the box and make sure that you're in line with the rest of your defenders. And as soon as you step out, it's easily exploitable in a Moyes system because you don't have the coverage around you. I think in this system, yes, we'll probably still see those mistakes, but we'll also see the good stuff that he can do a lot more because there's more opportunity for him to do it. So I wouldn't mind Mavropanos getting a bit more of a run, to be honest, because I think he could be really serviceable. And I think he can probably do a job at central centre-back as well, if we need cover there, which I think we will at some point, because whilst we have 4 good options at centre-back, I think when you play 3 centre-backs, you kind of need an extra body in there as well. So he's going to get minutes because someone's going to get injured.
Yeah, sure. Someone will have to give him a sedative before he starts if he's going to play centre back, though. Cover focus job, mate. None of that sprinting out the back line. Yeah, when we signed him, I think the gamble was always on, for Moyes, he was such a tank. If you could just stop him from doing all the crazy jumping out the back line, he would have been really, theoretically, could have been a really good box defender.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the crossing against crosses has just not really come at a consistent level. He's got more of the temperament of a really aggressive centre-back that doesn't end up defending deep a lot of the time. I actually think from an in-possession point of view, the wider that you split the centre-backs, which is happening now in our build-up structure, the more utility you get out of someone like Dinos Mavropanos. So I agree with you. The tactical shifts all kind of benefit him. So it doesn't make sense. To me, at least, it wouldn't make so much sense to let go at a time that you're moving more in the direction of something that helps the player. It's almost like when we had Thilo Kehrer, we were keeping Moyes, so you get rid. But if we were moving more towards the in possession focus stuff, then you would have kept Thilo because he was so good on the ball that it would have made sense to keep him around if you were going to do more of that. For me, Potts, really. I think Potts and Paquetá both off the bench. I mean, it's with 3 players off the bench we're talking about. I thought they were really good. I thought Paquetá, some nice up front stuff. With that more, it's not even a license to drop now. It's like, no, you're dropping, you're becoming part of the midfield, you're almost becoming the point of a diamond, and Bowen's doing this, the centre forward running off the back line stuff. That suits him really nicely. He can kind of use his back to goal stuff to hold a centre back off. If he draws a centre back out, he's good at winning fouls. Also, like, the dynamics of it kind of work for us in terms of sort of tricking refs, if you know what I mean, because he's more of a midfielder type player. So when a Harry Maguire comes charging out to sort of push him in the way that a striker, he's just going to win fouls all of the time off of refs because of who he is doing that. So I like that as an idea for us. I think his temperament's quite good for that role as well, because you want someone who's going to be, his risk taking. You can accommodate it basically when he's given that job. So thought he was good. Potts, yeah. How long has it been since someone just takes the ball on the half turn at the base of the midfield? It feels like it's been forever. Can't remember the last time. Oh wait, there was a guy, he went to Arsenal. Really nice to see that.
It was really good.
Felt a little bit Hayden Hackney in moments for me. There were a couple times where it was like, let's not knock the ball forward quite so aggressively. We can go sideways here. But that's natural. It's pre-season. I expect him to try really hard to make a big impression. And he did make a big impression. I was really, really impressed. Happy to see him play so well. We're going to talk about some more players on extra time. We're finishing here. We've run way over. We hope this would be a shorter one. It never is. So we'll see you over there. Actually, loads of people have joined recently. It's been great to have you all join. So yeah, we'll see most of you hopefully over on the extended version, where I'm going to carry on rambling about midfielders. See you in a bit. Bye.
Sound.